Alrighty, so one of the biggest questions that I keep getting asked now that the Festival King banner is out is I have, this coin or whatever coins available. Should I trade them in for this character, or should I feed the dupes to the character so that way their ultimate is doing more damage or scaling up? And honestly, it's obviously going to vary from account to account, and obviously these are just my own personal opinions, so don't, crucify me or anything for any of these, but we're going to be looking at the main 4 units that are on the banner currently today, and I'm going to kind of give you the rundown on whether or not I think that the coin that you pull is worth spending on the unit, or if it's worth just spending in the coin shop to try to pull a different unit. So obviously with the coin shop being going on right now, you can trade 3 coins for any of these festival units that are in the game at the moment, and some of these units are a little bit more niche. Some of them have pretty decent use, and then some of them don't really get added to a whole lot of banners anymore. Specifically, Lost Fane doesn't really get put on banners anymore. Liz doesn't really get put on banners anymore. Festival King doesn't really get put on banners anymore. But obviously these newest 4 are still really relevant. They're still really, really good in the meta, so they're a little bit more important. So let's look at the characters on Grand Cross database, just because it's actually going to show us the scaling and stuff of the ultimates and everything. And let's talk about Merlin first. So if you pulled extra copies of Merlin, maybe this was your first copy, whatever the case may be, but if you have extra coins of her, for me personally, I have 1 copy of Merlin that I have not fed the dupe for yet, and it's because I normally, when I play with Merlin, which I'm going to go ahead and say just flat out, I don't really use her a whole lot in PvP, so I don't have a ton of experience as far as her PvP gameplay goes, but more often than not, when I use her for Grey Demon, or the little bit of PvP that I do use her in, or some of the PvE content that I use her in, her ultimate really doesn't end up making too big of a difference, whether I have, big damage on it or not. It either does good and it's fine, or it just does bad and it is what it is. I just move on and use some of her other cards because they hit really hard. So for me personally, I don't get a whole lot of use out of her ultimate, so I'm holding on to my Merlin coins to use in the coin shop instead of feeding the dupe for her. So just personal opinions there. If you have extra copies of her and you want to use her, if you pull multiple copies of her, maybe if you only have 1 copy, it won't be worth your time to just get from 40 extra % there, but maybe if you pull 3 or 4 copies of her on the banner, maybe feeding all of those dupes and getting a bigger increase on the character might be more worth it to you. Keep in mind that each time you invest 1 extra copy into the character, you're going to get an extra 400 CC, so that'll end up helping you sort of like out CC your opponent and stuff like that, so take that into consideration. Moving on, we have Escanor. Escanor is an insane unit that is good for pretty much everything in the game. If you haven't pulled a copy of him yet, or maybe you're done summoning on the banner and you have some extra copies and you want to get Escanor and you don't have him already, I highly recommend you grab Escanor. Escanor is good in just a wide variety of game modes throughout the game. Very well-rounded unit. He's pretty much good in anything you can throw him at. So, with his ultimate, it really depends. Honestly, his ultimate is very, very good at 6/6, because not only are you going to be getting basically an extra ultimate's worth of damage out of it, but it's just going to guarantee that you kill more often than not. I mean, I guess technically it was designed to destroy Goddess Liz, being able to use the ultimate on her, so that way it kills her, she uses her revive, and then it hits her again and just absolutely wipes her off the map. But it's still really, really good for any opponent, regardless. Obviously, if they have a revive or not, it doesn't matter. He's gonna beat through it more often than not and kill them. So honestly, his is really good to invest into him if you haven't already, because he's still really meta relevant and everything like that. I would say that it's worth investing into, because there's a ton of situations where I'm using Escanor and maybe the situation's getting a little bit dicey, and I want to just sort of rush his ultimate so that way I can get that insane amount of damage off, and just take out whoever the threat is immediately as soon as possible. So his ultimate is super, super good. I rely on it a lot now and then, every now and then whenever the PvP situation arises, but also just in regular PvE events and stuff like that. We have Kamara going on right now, but some of the other PvE sort of bosses that they introduce every once in a while for events, the ultimate absolutely just shreds through a lot of those bosses. So he's just really good in a lot of different scenarios. Even in Bird Boss, he's actually surprisingly pretty good nowadays. A lot of people have been coming up with the 1 Escanor teams. So if you have extra copies of him, I would say probably invest them into him, because it's really worth it. because I already have my Escanor 6/6 and I did pull an extra copy of him. I'm just sitting on one extra coin, but I'll be able to use that in the future for whatever I need. So moving to Bon. Bon is obviously another one that you're probably going to want to feed the dupe for because of his really dumb 6/6 effect. The fact that they made it to where this character gains an additional skill effect on 6/6 makes him that much more valuable to get to 6/6, so you're probably going to want to try to invest into him so that way you can get that extra bit of damage, because not only are you going to be doing an extra 15% of damage just off of the PvP or the ultimate scaling, but at 6/6 he gains Rupture, which means if they have buffs on, you're going to do double damage to them, which is just an insane amount of damage in general, because this move automatically hits insanely hard because of, you know, the way you build Bon and everything like that, and it scales off of his maximum HP, but Rupture is just going to make it hit that much harder. So I invested the Bon copy that I personally got, just because I think Bon is still really useful, even though he's sort of kind of getting phased out of the meta. But Bon is a pretty future-proofed character. He's a human who relies on other humans because of Excalibur Arthur, and there's always going to be new humans coming out in the game. There's only so many races, and humans are a very popular one. So, you know, with new humans coming out and new holy relics and stuff like that coming out all the time, his team isn't going anywhere. I think people are still going to use Bon. Obviously, just right now, they're going to have to wait for some sort of new unit that's going to be able to combat King a little bit more. But honestly, he's still really, really good. Technically he's future-proofed, so I would recommend, you know, investing into him, so that way maybe whenever he does start to become like more on the rise again, you can use that character and get more use out of his ultimate. So personal preference there. I fed the dupe to Bon. King is the new one. If you pull multiple copies of King and you're like, hey, you know, I already have King, I don't know if I should invest into his ultimate or if I should spend those, you know, coins on another unit that I don't have. I think that his ultimate is really good. The fact that the scaling on this is just atrocious, like it's literally you gain 1% additional or like 1% additional damage received from the ultimate just by using one dupe. That is ridiculous. Like, that sucks. That's so bad. And then you gain 2% more at level 3, which is atrocious, and then it doubles, and then it doubles, and then it doubles. So for some reason at 4/6, 5/6, and 6/6, it's actually worth investing the dupe into, but to get to that point you're obviously going to have to get minimal gains in the first place, which really sucks. I hate the fact that they made the scaling on this so bad, but it is what it is. If you want to invest into it to try to future-proof him, you can. I don't think he's as future-proofed as a character, especially as Bon is. Like, he doesn't have anything specific about him that makes him sort of work with a specific race or anything like that. But he's a really good unit. He automatically deals an extra 30% of damage dealt just because of his passive. He puts up a shield, which is really, really good. I think that he's going to be really, really good for a pretty long time in the meta, unless something just comes out and just absolutely like hard counters him and just throws him off of the map, basically. So I think that it's probably worth investing some coins into him if you really want to. Obviously, it's all personal opinion here. So if you know, maybe you have a couple of extra coins and you're like, oh, well, I don't really plan on using the ultimate that much. Like, he already deals like insane damage with his regular cards, which he definitely does. You know, by all means, if you're missing a copy of Lost Vein and you want to use him for certain scenarios or whatever the case may be, you obviously can't use a unit that you don't have. So if you have extra copies of other characters, feel free to grab a unit that you don't have. Having them at 1/6 is obviously better than not having them at all, because you're at least going to be able to use their 2 regular cards, and even if the ultimate doesn't do like insanely well because it's not completely maxed out or anything like that, you still have it. So that's just my personal opinion on the whole matter. I don't know if this has been super helpful as far as swaying you in one way or the other, but yeah, I don't know. I've just been getting a lot of questions, and obviously it's just very account bound, sort of, or like it all depends on what you already have on your account and whether or not you need something for a certain scenario or a certain game mode, or you want to invest in certain teams or whatever the case may be. There's just so many different things that go into it. You kind of have to make the decision on your own and sort of gauge things and just look at it from a decent perspective. So that's it from me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this was informative. Like I said, feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. We're trying to hit 6K by the end of the year, and that's it from me. So I'll see you guys in the next one.